Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the 4th Digital Transformation in Government Conference, Day 4, hybrid. And this is going to be the way of the future for the conference for next year. What we're planning. Now, I'm actually talking to people. This is wonderful. I see people in the room. It's amazing what a difference that makes. Now, what I want to do is, first of all, run through. We've had a very successful 3 days. There are tons of presentations out. The links are all established. You can read, even if you miss them, you can go back to the chapter site, the conference live site, and you can basically go and get all of the sessions. Okay, so remember, you've got your passwords, go in. So even if you missed one, you can basically catch up on it. We had some fantastic presentations yesterday and the day before yesterday, and they're really worthwhile. Today, we've got a great lineup. It's going to start off with Philippe Johnston. He's the CIO for the National Research Council of Canada. He's going to be talking about creating a digital vision for federal research. At 10 o'clock, we're very fortunate to have Yvan Gauthier, also from the National Research Council, and he's head of the Artificial Intelligence Accelerator, and he's going to be giving a talk on the benefits and risks of AI in government. And that's going to be followed by Benoit Dehaye, okay, who's from the director at the Treasury Board of Canada, and he's responsible for data and artificial intelligence. He's going to be talking about Canadian federal government's approach to responsible AI. In the afternoon, we've got a visitor from down under, Dr. John Halligan. He's from the University of Canberra, and he's going to be talking about exploring the relationship between digital era governance and public administration. And that'll be followed by a trio of individuals, Dr. Jourdan from the University of Ottawa, Dr. Vio Unit from IBM, and that's sort of a partnership. And they are co-directors of the Ottawa Cyber Range. And then that's also another speaker is going to be Brad Stocking. He's from IBM Security Services. And then last but certainly not least is going to be General Retired David Anderson. And he's going to be from National Defense. And he's going to be talking about the Canadian Armed Forces Digital Campaign Plan. Like I said, they've been working in this area. I don't know what iteration this is. They've been working in this area for a long time. And there could be some insights that can be leveraged in other institutions, other countries, and other agencies. So the first speaker, oops, sorry, I have no idea what happened. Okay, no. I'm not going to give the presentation. Our first.
Already having a stressful day enough.
Well, our first speaker is going to be talking about creating a digital vision for federal research. He's currently CIO for the National Research Council, is Philippe Johnston. And at the NRC, he's leading a digital transformation to better enable innovation for Government of Canada researchers. Okay, for that. He's also president of the CIO Association of Canada, and he's leading the growth of the CIO profession across Canada. He's growing its members, the number of chapters, the brand of the CIO within private, not-for-profit, and public sector organizations. Prior to joining the NRC in April 21, he managed IMIT operations for Transport Canada. And in this role, he had 400 IMIT professionals in a $75 million budget. And the team did incredibly well and won a great many awards. He was one of the first CIOs to push for citizen development and also wrote a paper on how CIOs need to thrive in the fourth industrial revolution that he's been asked to present at numerous conferences. He also held the CIO position at the Granting Council, Social Sciences and Humanities Research, and the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC, from 2017 to 2019. He was at Treasury Board Secretariat from 2011 to 2016, where he led all parts of the internal IMIT organization. Okay, for that. And prior to joining TBS, Philippe helped establish the cyber defense program at the Communications Security Establishment while creating partnerships with academia, vendors, and with key international organizations. He's an experienced IMIT executive, okay, and has been innovating and creating value. I've had the pleasure of knowing Philippe since 1993. Okay, yeah, 1993, 1992. And I'm absolutely delighted that he could take the time to speak for us. So without further ado, over to you. All right.
Thank you very much, Rob. So where did Rob and I meet? Any guesses?
It's World Series.
What's that?
Today's World Series.
No, but that would have been a good one. We all remember that when they won the 1993 World Series. We both went to the Royal Military College of Canada in Kingston. So that was a nice place to do your university on Lake Ontario beside Queens. So that was a beautiful place. There's a lot of people here from research. Maybe before I start, are you being well serviced from an IMIT perspective to conduct leading edge research? Raise your hands, those in the room who think that's happening. Okay, 0 hands. Either we have no researchers. Do we have any researchers or people who are doing research? Okay, so we do have research. So the answer is the same for us at the NRC and has been for quite some time. The exponential growth of digital for research has been incredible in those areas that they're doing it well. But in general, probably in Canada, we haven't provided the right funding, the right models, the vision, and the strategy to enable that for Canada. Not just at the NRC, but at universities, at maybe even some commercial, some small, medium enterprises that are trying new products, et cetera. So when I arrived 2 years ago at the NRC, that was very clear. So this is what you're seeing in terms of trying to figure out a way to position either funding, improvements that the NRC would need to do in order to enable the researchers to conduct research at pace. And what are some of those things? And I'll talk to some of those, but it's networking, maybe we need 100 gig lines. I don't know. It's instant access to compute, instant access to large storage. Those are the things that are bogging down our ability to do great research today. And I'll talk a little bit about how we went about creating that story, getting some initial funding and hopefully some more funding in order to invest. So next slide. There you go. We're going to talk about 3 things today in terms of the value and the importance of a strategy. And it's a digital strategy, but a lot of people are saying the business strategy and the digital strategy are now becoming the same thing. No business is doing anything without going digital. So digital equals business strategy. I'm going to also talk about how you can determine and benchmark some of your strategies and your tactics. Also, the ability to facilitate your ability to communicate with key stakeholders and decision makers about the value of the work to the organization. To support you in creating a digital strategy, these 3 topics today and the insights and the experience, I'm just going to be very clear that when we started our strategy at the NRC, we didn't just look internally. Most strategies, if you look internally, you're going to fail because you're not really looking outside, looking at other areas where you could learn from. We partnered, for example, with 4 other science-based departments and agencies, and as well as we knew we needed to partner with in government, our Shared Services Canada partner, who provides a lot of the things I noted that we need to improve on. And we'll dive into deeper details today onto the 3 topics you see here. In order to develop a digital strategy, it's paramount and of importance you understand and define what the business needs are. And I talked about that. Your digital strategy must be driven by the business and not vice versa. Central to doing this is consulting with key stakeholders. I'll discuss that later. And in developing our strategy, we also conducted an environmental scan to identify leading edge practices to ensure we weren't modeling ourselves after the best. If we want to provide leading edge IT for our federal researchers, then we had to identify what leading edge actually is and go from there. And lastly, the digital strategy must be aligned with your business objectives. Making this link explicitly in your strategy is central to being able to effectively communicate your value proposition to the organization. In our case, this was fundamental to our success in obtaining internal financial commitments. Here's an example. This slide provides an overview of our approach to create our strategy. We consulted with over 44 stakeholders through interviews, focus groups, conducted surveys of researchers with a response rate of approximately 25%. So in other words, we have about 2,500 researchers, about 700 of them responded, which actually was pretty good. So we got a lot of intel from the actual researcher community. And by the way, if anyone is interested in that survey, it was a very good survey. If you ever want to send one out to your researchers to find out if you're doing the right things for MIT, that survey we can share with anybody here. And so that also helped us as well go with international comparisons to identify the best practices and to conduct an economic impact study to help us situate the importance of investing in digital strategy and the issues and the importance to federal decision makers and economic growth. So in our case, we're not a profit and loss center. We are in some ways. Actually, the NRC does create revenue for the work they do. But in terms of the digital piece, we haven't integrated that, I think, holistically into our P&L strategy. So we need to, if we're going to do investments in IT, we need to ask the decision makers, if you give us $100, we think it'll generate $200 of GDP or growth within Canada. So we also did that analysis as well. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Rob. We established a governance structure as well at the ADM and the DM level. So if this is of importance to your organization, you got to have the right decision makers involved in trying to guide the strategy, provide decisions and support as well. So all of this allowed us to move forward. The governance committees were central to gathering the input from other organizations to help develop the vision, but also in obtaining the buy-in and the support, as well as forging strong partnerships for addressing digital gaps as a collective, as opposed to the previous siloed approaches that federal government departments used to do. In order to do this successfully, though, we had to dedicate a lot of time, some resources, approximately 8 months. And we actually did spend about $500K in professional services to help us out, as well as a fully dedicated FTE. So it's not for the light of heart. If you're going to do this well, you need to invest in it and have the right resources in terms of creating a digital strategy. So this is what we came up with. So I'll let you read that one because it could be helpful to some of the people who are on the call or in the room. Maybe this is what every chief information officer should be striving to do for every research organization that they support. We want to provide a dynamic, collaborative, and secure research environment that empowers the researchers through automated and accelerated development, adoption, and application of cutting-edge digital tools and services to emerging research and innovation areas in a way that is scalable, sustainable, and inclusive for all researchers involved. So I guess this was developed over the 8 months with all the stakeholders. They all agreed this was a very powerful statement. And there's a lot of things in here that allow us to focus our activities into operational activities, as you can see on this slide. The 4 main areas I would say, though, that came out for research as part of our strategy was data sharing and analysis, increased and easy to access technology, self-service, portals. I'm not sure if anybody here uses electronic lab notebooks. Does anybody use that here in the room? Those are just some ideas that we came up with. We want to automate the research lifecycle. So as taking a user perspective in terms of like what are their needs from initiation, like I'm thinking about an idea, to the development of their hypothesis being approved and also being published in a journal or being provided to a small, medium enterprise in Canada to generate IP for Canada. And then finally, easy to access technology platforms. So again, it's trying to make the whole researcher experience seamless from an IMIT perspective, whereas today, I think, at least with the NRC and maybe across universities as well, many of the researchers are doing their own IT instead of doing research. So is that what we want our researchers to be doing? And in fact, we're at the University of Ottawa today. So a little bit of a personal story. My wife is now doing her PhD in neuroscience at the University of Ottawa. And luckily, she was in IT before because she is doing her own IT at home. Like we've got our own network. She's doing her own research there just because they're like, I know for a fact that the University of Ottawa can't provide that. Not that that's I think that's not, Martin Bernier's fault. I like Martin. It's just the whole way we've approached research, and IT is the oxygen for researchers. And for whatever reason, we're catching up on this game here in Canada. And I think that's what's greatly impacting our productivity. Luckily, my wife, just to take that example a little bit further, she was in IT and she knows IT security, so she knows how to protect her IP. I would doubt that all the researchers have that type of experience and portfolio that they know how to do that. So we're probably doing a lot of great stuff at home or unsecurely that is leaving our country and going somewhere else. And that's a huge risk for us as a country. So although this is not about cybersecurity, security for researchers and that part of the vision, you noted that there's a word and secure research environments. That's a really important one if we're doing IP and we want to keep it in Canada or give it to companies in Canada, not give it to the rest of the world. Okay, I will move on to the next slide. If you can't sell your vision, then you've done a lot of work for nothing. So you have to be able to sell your vision. So the key thing is to get people involved and to figure out ways to get people excited or intrigued or curious about the work you're doing when you're doing a digital strategy. So some of the best practices that you might want to put in place, you got to align the vision and strategy, obviously, with the business objectives and the benefits of the organizations and the outcomes. So how does digital impact some of the outcomes your organization are trying to achieve? You got to link those and make that strong linkage. You got to leverage the expertise of non-technical team members. So obviously we had somebody who was really good at comms. We had some policy analysts just to help strengthen and message what we were trying to say. So the number one thing CIOs and IT people have a difficult doing is trying to explain something to business people in a way that actually gets them excited or curious or wanting to support you. And we talk about the non-technical language. You'll see even the previous slides, I haven't mentioned, we need we need a quantum server with this amount of whatever power or what have you. Like, we're not talking that language to develop that strategy. As well, you need to foster a mindset of internal culture of innovation, both within your team and whoever you're working with, whether it was the other SBDAs in this particular case, or it was the researchers. They'd heard this story enough times before. That's another part of selling a story. If it's been tried 2, 3, 4 times before unsuccessfully. I remember I went to a meeting in Halifax with some of the researchers to discuss what we're doing. And I could tell you, they weren't very interested. And I asked after, I said, why is no one interested? They've heard this story before, Phil, 2 or 3 times, and nothing's ever happened. Nothing's ever changed. So that's an interesting point. You need to be able to deliver and make changes. Of note, I was able after the fact to try to say, hey, look, it's a little bit different this time, not just because of me, because I think we're attacking the strategy and the vision with our partner, which is Shared Services Canada. In the past, and they were co-partners. Like, I purposely made sure that co-partner was there. So you need to know, as part of developing a strategy, who's going to be the one who's going to influence your strategy the most. And so in that particular case, it allowed us to move forward. And in fact, we did do something a little bit different at the NRC, which was in the budget this year based on this work. So there was something different. And now the researchers are listening and they're hearing. We adopted the Shared Services Canada model, and they were developed to house services like email or websites or, I would say simplistic IT service delivery in some ways, like, it wasn't complex like what the researchers needed in terms of, to do AI, ML, or even to implement high performance computing that we wanted to leverage. It's a lot different from an infrastructure perspective. So we were successful based on this work to go into a tactical, I would say, element where the NRC in the budget got the approval to do its own information technology. So its own delivery of IT and its own procurement, because that was stopping us from going at speed and delivering IT. So, that was a huge benefit of this vision. Now we are moving forward to do an activity plan, figure out with SSC what that actually means in terms of new service delivery models. So that's pretty powerful. That's what this strategy has allowed us to do. And now the researchers are listening because now they see a light at the end of the rainbow that's a little bit different. We're going to change the service delivery model. Okay. Next slide. So we developed some short-term, medium-term, and long-term actions that we could take a look at. And if you see at the bottom of the slide, the economic impact study suggested that R&D productivity as a result of these investments in IT could increase GDP by $164 to $657 million per year. And that's another 14 to 5,900, because we're focused on the IP generating research. So the IP generating research we do, our goal is to transfer it to Canadian businesses. That's our goal, like innovation, get people work on it, create companies, create jobs. That's why the NRC exists. So that was pretty interesting. And so that was a good number and something that people could think about. So it's not just money coming in to support IT, but it's going to be generating taxes, because whatever the tax revenue is on this, it kind of comes back and pays for itself if you do that investment. All right. So, driving IT innovation through your digital is also about execution. So getting the buy-in and support for the strategic plan in terms of all decision makers and support to agree to the plan, and communicating it is extremely important. In terms of getting the buy-in and support, a lot of people that are at the senior levels in government, I think they have a notional idea what research is or what it takes to do research, like in their brains. But we wanted to make sure they truly understood it and it was real for every single one of them. So what we did last August, as we were delivering the strategy, the decision makers were part of this strategy. We brought them to 2 labs in Montreal, one in agriculture and the one at Boucherville. If you ever go to the 20 by the tunnel, Boucherville is right there. It's our advanced manufacturing facility, automotive facility. It's pretty cool, actually. It's pretty amazing. So we brought them to see what a lab was. And a lab isn't like just someone in a white coat in a computer like you saw in the movies. This is like huge machinery, huge equipment, huge investments in capital that we want to make sure it was clear. And of course, all that machinery and equipment is generating data, that's why we're doing research, to take a look at the data, to make sure people can develop better processes or better materials in our cases. So we got them there to see what it was. And, I really asked, I sort of set them up in a way. I said, how many people in this like 250 person facility with racks of servers and equipment everywhere, networking, how many IT people do you think we have on site working and supporting these 200 some odd researchers? And everyone was saying 12 or 10 or, because when you really look at it, it's a pretty advanced manufacturing / research area. And we only had 2. And so that was the light. It was like 2 people. So what do you think the researchers are doing? Like, they're not waiting for me as a CIO. Like I can't support them. I can't support 220 different requests when they're trying to do research in real time. So that was a really important meeting. And so if you have an opportunity to bring people out and showcase what it is the business is, and then line and making that connection to whatever you're trying to do from a strategic perspective. That was very powerful. Full endorsement from everybody. I said, PSPC, SSC, and the 5 SBDAs. We try to get finance out there, the DM of finance. Anyhow, all this to say TBS was there. They got it. So that's a good way to get buy-in, is actually showcase. Don't just use documents and words. So we then have to align the jobs to the strategy. We're now actually, even though, and I'll say the end result of this strategy at the end, because it's interesting. Well, yeah, I'll just leave it like that. You need to have as well, make sure you have a monitor and you have KPIs. So KPIs are really important, and you have to have KPIs that are linked to the business. It's not KPIs linked to how many servers you put out, although that could be helpful. It's more about like, what did those servers do for research? How did they help? Did the researchers always have access to the servers they wanted and time they needed to do their research? Okay. Moving on, we're almost done, and then I'll take questions. And here's some example of monitoring progress. So we did our survey last year, like I mentioned. In fact, we were rolling out. It's going to be it's an annual survey. We're rolling out our survey again right now to the researchers. And in fact, within like 2 days, we had 100 researchers respond already to our survey. So they're interested. They think there's things happening that are going to be helpful to them. We're starting to get them interested in digital and what we're planning to do. So here are some KPIs. I won't go through a lot of them, but for the research community, I think everybody understands, percentage of publications, citation scores. So, and then I'm not sure how we would ever do economic growth and jobs and GDP. Like, that measure would be very difficult to do and take a lot of time to try to put in place like an end-to-end accurate like tracking system from the time you put money into digital and the time potential jobs are created in Canada. Anyhow, here's some ideas that you may want to think of if you're doing a research digital project. These are the ones that at least most of these are actually things we can actually measure. So we did an online survey. We've talked about that. Here are some of the questions. So and actually some of the results, which we've been pretty open and transparent about. That in general, you can see we're about 20%, like you can take 20% successful or 80% we suck. Like that's generally how you can read these numbers, and so therefore, that's a dismal number, and that was fine. That's why people get switched out of jobs. So I can say that I had nothing to do with these numbers. I just inherited them. But I am trying to do something, and we are trying to do something to improve these numbers. And we're doing the survey again this year. We decided to keep the questions the same so that we would have a good baseline. The fact that 55% though did say, I was a little, that one at the bottom, the 55%, I thought it would be like 90% that would say, but probably if you take 20% of people who said it was fine, then you're only talking about like 55 and between 55 and 75 that I'm not sure why they didn't say IT was going to help them be successful. Okay, so in summary, so if you want to drive IT innovation as a CIO or within your research organization or your business, you got to develop a digital transformation strategy that's aligned to your business needs. You got to be able to sell your vision to enable digital acceleration. And then you got to deliver the value through the strategy execution. So I'm just going to conclude with sort of what happened. So we worked for 8 months. We actually, in the government, it's called Memorandum to Cabinet. We prepared it with 5 other SBDs, about a $700 million investment over 5 years. But as you know, we're not, well, the government environment or right now, the fiscal framework right now is we're in debt. Like we've had to pay for a lot of things in the past 3 years. So it didn't really make it to the table as a priority. So you might say we failed, or what was the point of doing all this? Well, it still has been an extremely helpful thing for a number of reasons. First, it's allowed us to focus. And even if we didn't get the full money we wanted to do, it allowed us to prioritize internal activities and make changes this last fiscal year. Or like from that time to today. And in fact, we've developed and taken the strategy because it's still valid. It's just we didn't have all the money we wanted to execute it, but we had some money. And so we prioritized what we could do, and it's allowed us to focus. And we know that what we're focusing on are the things that the researchers are interested in based on their survey and also the many outreach activities that I've done and my team has done. And we've actually done, I was actually looking at that yesterday, and I actually should include it in this slide. I should put a slide with greens where these are all the things we said we would do back in October. And we've done like 30% of them, or are executing on 30% of them. So I was very pleasantly surprised. Like I hadn't thought about it that way until my team on the strategy side like said, hey, Phil, like you shouldn't be discouraged. This has actually gone at least somewhere, like it didn't go nowhere. So the team understands it. My team understands it, like in terms of an IT organization of 250 IT professionals. We know where we want to go, how we want to execute. So that's really helpful. Internally, our team is on the same page. And as well, the researchers, at least on my end, at the VP level, I hold semi-annual, I would say, touch points with the VPs. And then there's a whole bunch of other sessions that happen with all the other researchers, like at the director level, the directors of research, or the research information technology officers. So they're getting more info on this. And at the VP level, at least we're providing updates on all of these things. So in the end, especially for strategies, I'm never discouraged. It's always incremental gains, like small gains. And then after a year or two, you start to realize, hey, we're actually achieving our vision and our strategy. And so you should never be discouraged if you can't do everything all at once. This has allowed us to be grounded and to provide a focus for the organization. And also for me, support from the president, which is extremely important if you're a CIO. I think that's it. Rob, I hope that was fine. I'm available for questions.
Great seeing somebody in person. It's wonderful. So what happens is the questions right now is, please, if you have a question, just raise your hand and speak. The mics will pick that up. Can you hear me?
I'm just wondering if people have it virtually, Mike.
Yeah, and virtually there's a Q&A function. Okay. So if you don't mind. Okay. No, you're the one that's important, not me. Here we go. Not being able to develop.
Calculate economic impact, and you can. So incubators like Invest Ottawa and even the entrepreneurship hub here have models that take research and show what happened after that research impact. So I'm sure you can build that, because I think it would make your
Business case stronger.
more compelling.
Okay. Every time I speak to you, Greg, you have the answers. I should bring you on full time. I definitely, Greg, if you could share that with me, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that's great. Okay, Caleb. And by the way, I won't know your names. I'm just showing off that I know at least two people.
You know, the government loves to build strategies, and I hear the researchers pushback that sometimes it's not actually implemented or followed up with, particularly based on the fact you're from a research council. Do you find that maybe experiments, trials, tests to prove hypothesis might actually help kind of iterate and innovate in your organization? And what kind of those experiments and tests and trials are you doing to test your hypothesis?
Okay. In fact, that was part of our, you didn't see the full detailed plan or MC. And in fact, we didn't add it as a slide. We had, in fact, phase one of the MC was let's do a lot of those pilots and figure it out. So then you could make the follow-on year's money conditional on the success of those ideas, which I think we need to do more often. Like, let's not just give somebody 200 million a blank check and then find out that they haven't delivered anything in 3-4 years. I love the breaking it down. So that's what I was saying. We've done 30 to 40% of those experiments with some of the internal funding. Some of those include virtual cloud sandboxes. So we've deployed that. Virtual cloud sandboxes that researchers can easily go in and set up whatever they want to do to run experiments. We've also set up a data hub for them. So we've done these pilots. They're actually running really successful. And maybe to add on to finishing the story is, you know, we think there's still legs to this. Although honestly, the fiscal framework is still the same as it was last year. So we think there's still, and we were planning to dust off the MC, use the successes that we demonstrated with the internal funding for portions of phase one as our way to convince seniors that we can do this, right? It's evidence, like you didn't give us the money, we didn't go through you, but this is what we did to show you that you can trust us with the money and to do good things with it. So good question, Caleb. So those are some examples, and electronic lab notebooks as well. Like we're doing that right now. We're piloting those within the research communities. So that's what I'm saying is we ended up finding internal funding to try to do some of these. Okay. Wow, I'm not used to so many hands. And so I'm going to try to make it simple, and I'll just go this way. And you guys should put up a number like teams, 1, 2, 3. Like, I don't know who was first. We'll just start. Okay, you at the bottom, if you could, please. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Great presentation. I appreciate that. My question is, were you able to leverage or collaborate with the Council of CIOs, high computing, Canary infrastructure, all of that within how did that fit into your vision?
So we did consult with them, and we think there's a better opportunity for us to cooperate, and in fact, even potentially, but this is not official, but leverage them for delivery of better services. So the answer is yes, but that takes money as well. Like, they don't do things for free. So yes. Next.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Je me nomme Rosalie. Je travaille dans une unité innovation, recherche, emploi et développement social Canada. 2 questions. First, how many people are behind the strategy? And then how do you navigate the mobilization strategies in the federal government? So you have the digital government ambition.
Yep.
You have the federal data strategy. You see big departments like ESDC have their own data strategy. And then you have more strategy development, multiple of them, even within one department. I'm at the beginning of developing a digital strategy for one of the 3 sub-components at ESDC. There were so many strategies.
OK.
How do you navigate that?
Ben, c'est une très bonne question. Donc, la première question, j'avais 1 personne et demie à temps plein internellement. J'avais une firme, donc il y avait 2-3 employés de la firme que j'avais engagés. Et on avait un working group, donc un working group avec les 5 autres ministères. Donc, il y avait également du monde de chaque ministère là-dedans. On avait les ADM, on avait donc ADM, PDM. Donc, ça, c'était vraiment l'ensemble. Mais c'est nous autres qui géraient la stratégie, et moi-même, et les fonctionnaires. C'était pas la firme qui drillait ça. Puis ça va répondre à ma deuxième partie de la question. La majorité des stratégies gouvernementaux sont vraiment là-bas, là, sont là. OK? Donc, moi, je pense que chaque ministère devrait avoir leur propre stratégie qui est spécifique à leurs besoins. Puis je pense que vous pouvez voir ça, que ce n'est pas juste des idées grandiose que tu peux répéter si tu faisais ChatGPT. What's a good data strategy? You get that out of ChatGPT now, right? You don't need, I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. And you probably get a good one. But you know, what is a digital or research strategy specific to 2,200 research located across the country with these conditions? Like you need, like that's what we tried to do. Like, so that's the strategy that matters to me. I was at Treasury Board for a while, so I'm not saying that like they definitely provide great value on things like information management, cybersecurity, and the things we should be doing as policy. But I feel that every department should figure out what it is that they care about. And for us, it's 2,200 researchers that are generating IP that's going to commercial. So you need to figure out what the strategy is going to make that successful. And I would say that's the one that matters. And so I would just leave it at that. I don't know. And you need to take pieces of the data strategy and, you know, the great pieces that we developed in terms of how to deploy better digital for government. You need to figure out how you put them in here. But, you know, you can't be if your strategy is saying point to the Government of Canada strategy, like that, no one's going to read that. Like no one's going to care. You got to point to something that matters and is tangible to them. I don't know if that's good. C'est correct comme ça? Oui. OK. Prochaine personne. Oui.
Hello, thank you. My name is Chanarong. I'm adjunct prof at the School of Engineering Design and Teaching Innovation. I have two questions as well. First question is, when your statement say that scalable, sustainable inclusion vision, how does it fit within your work when you try to do IP generate research and transfer to the businesses in Canada?
Okay. That's your first question?
Yes.
Okay. So scalable means that, you know, it can go up and down easily, like without much work, without a huge engineering effort. You're providing something that obviously scalable. Sustainable, obviously, you know, we're talking about models. And I think a lot about the cloud when I think about this. Like a researcher needs to do experiments for the next 3 days. They spin up their environments. After that, all they're doing is analyzing the data. That's a different environment to analyze the data. So they spin the other things down. And then inclusive means for us, it's a lot about geography. If we only have a piece of equipment in St. John's, Newfoundland, like the wave tank as an example, but we have researchers across the country that want to leverage the wave tank to do experiments. Flying them to St. John's every time is not necessarily the right way, but there are other ways where we can open up the data, open up the access virtually or digitally to make sure the research from around the world or from anywhere can do the research. So inclusivity was more about geography and making sure that those barriers were out. It wasn't the inclusivity that people are using for most of their EDI practices.
And second question, when you mentioned about transfer the research to Canadian enterprise, but from my experience working with the Silicon Valley enterprise, they seem to have aggressive like buying and money. Would that happen at Point as well if it's US Silicon Valley bought out those research? And is it? And I'm sure it's happened. Do you think it's difficult or easier to deal with this kind of cases?
Okay, so we will not go to Silicon Valley. We'll always go to Canadian companies. Once it goes to Canadian companies, though, we can't prevent. Like we can't prevent what the Canadian company decides to do. They have their own ways of doing things, and maybe that's a bigger piece of the equation where we're not setting up our Canadian businesses to thrive in Canada, and people see an opportunity to thrive once and then they leave and maybe they start something else. They start other stuff in Canada. I guess a lot of people do that, and that does keep the engine rolling. But yeah, we don't get involved in what happens after the Canadian company gets started. Who is next? Yes, okay.
I liked hearing about one of your objectives around protecting IP. Very comforting. I also saw some of the metrics that you put up. One of them was in particular saying 5% agree that the security practices do not impede your researchers' activities.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how you got such a great number, what your process there was, and moreover, as you mentioned, with respect to ChatGPT and other things they might be doing, how that might change or alter it, given that those things might be considered beyond the scope of, your network or your architecture or like shadow IT, for example. So just curious as to your thoughts on that.
Okay, lots of questions. So was the first question, how did we get such a great response rate on our survey?
Well, the 5% metric in relation to security not impacting your researchers' ability to conduct their own research.
Well, that's because they're just doing what they're doing. But it's not because we're doing it correctly.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. It just means they like the freedoms and the opportunity, because I'm just telling you, we have not built the right thing. So my wife thinks that because she's just working from home, doing whatever she wants. And so I think a lot of Canada and Canadian researchers are working like my wife. So it's not impeding them because they're doing it themselves. So it doesn't mean that we're doing it well. Like that's an inference. In terms of your second question,
Around ChatGPT.
oh yeah, so you're going to be hearing from Yvan, right? Yvan is coming. There he is. Oh, sorry. We've never met in person. That's how I've been there 2 years. So Yvan and I, we've seen each other on the screen. So in fact, Yvan is a researcher. After this talk, I'm going to say, hey, Yvan, is what I said make sense? And we're going to have a discussion to see if he thinks that what I said makes sense. But Yvan is going to be talking to you about the fact that him and his team and the Chief Digital Research Officer at the NRC, we're lucky we have a digital technologies research area, which Yvan is from, and they have AI experts. So we're very lucky. So we are going to be doing some things at the NRC, and I believe Yvan's going to just talk to you about what we're doing. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. But the fact is, we can't police what's happening, and we can't stop people from using these tools. We can only provide the best advice and guidance of how to safely use them. And for us as a research organization, that's important to us. And Yvan's going to tell you, if you're researchers, you should probably be aware of these things if you're going to use it. And then maybe there's something your university or whatever organization is thinking about doing, and Yvan's maybe going to talk to you about what we're doing. Okay, you guys are new additions. So yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you for the great presentation. You said in your presentation that NRC focuses much on the research that supports IP and mainly those IP-based research. I'm doing research in innovation and companies that stems out of research from Canadian universities. And my research is showing that the GDP is in fact more impacted by spin-offs, companies, startups that inject jobs into the markets more in these days than the IP generated research. In these days, when we talk about ChatGPT or AI-driven research, there is no way that you can protect this research through IP nowadays. It's highly competitive and it's changing very fast. It's very fast-paced. So why don't we think of a way to encourage that kind of research, the commercializable one, the applicable one? The IP-based research is good. It's nice. It protects our biomedical cutting-edge technologies and so on and so forth. But there is a big chunk of research that actually generates GDP and fast one through companies and startups that we need to focus on. Like Greg, I believe, mentioned the entrepreneurship hubs or academic entrepreneurship in universities. Isn't this the time for the government and government supporting agencies to support that research and protect and encourage researchers to do that kind of research?
So I agree, but I'm not the expert. It sounds like what you're saying makes sense. And of course, when we were talking about that GDP formula, it was probably looking at some of those things where, hey, this is typically what happens if you do some IP, you give it to a company, and then all of a sudden 2 companies come out of that, or 3 ideas. So we used a pretty good formula, economic model. The firm we used is an expert in this. So the idea is, yes, I guess we should be doing that, but taking it further for me, I don't have the answer.
That's not fair. So answer, sure, GIRAP, there's a lot of federal money going into different entrepreneurships and invest organizations. So
but again, it's not just about the funding. researchers are very hesitant and very risk averse in Canada as opposed to for them in the USA, for example. And even if startups are being built on command, they eventually sell out. The head over of the companies, they go to US always because there's more encouraging for the research.
Generalization, it's not entirely true. Not everybody sells out and not everybody goes to the US, but
That's not correct, but many of them.
if you've done research for 8 or 10 years, many times those people are burnt out. And many times those aren't the right people who run companies. They're researchers and they turn themselves into CEOs, and that's not a good model either. So there's a lot more different kinds of work. Sorry.
We'll have
Took over your presentation.
we'll have a few more questions and then afterwards, we'll just have a coffee break to refresh and then get the next speaker ready to go.
And there was just 2 there. That was it. So we only got a couple more as well. So it works out well.
Hi, thanks, Phil. My name is Pierre. I sit on the board with Azaka with Bob. So, thank you for the presentation. One thing that we know about is in backyard, some universities are really leading edge. Watermelon is one that comes with a lot of things. Nortel used to be known as really a pioneer in, you go to Europe or US, they know about Nortel. BlackBerry was one, struggling right now. Why is it with the caliber of success that we have in the university, we find ourselves being laggards in terms of being able to get the next Apple? Why is even Elon spent some time in Canadian university, but he thrives in US. Why can't we succeed as be more successful?
So, I mean, look, I think this one's been pretty well documented, is that we need better business people. Like at the end of the day, that's where he was going. If researchers now take over and become a CEO of a company, well, they don't know how to drive marketing. They don't know how to drive sales, international negotiations, blah, like I could probably list a whole bunch of things. Now, this is Phil Johnston, who reads papers answering this question. This is not Phil from the NRC. And so, but I do agree, like, why were we successful in Waterloo? Well, BlackBerry was there, right? Why were we, like, we had a good company that was, good for a while, and then obviously didn't pivot appropriately at the right time to take advantage of their, I would say, great advantage. They lost it. So somehow we need to do better business. That's my answer to you. And I think the only thing I'll say is that there is a new corporation that was announced that's going to be trying to do that. It's called the Canada Innovation Corporation. So, by the way, innovation is taking that the research and stuff and putting it into commercialization, right? That's the definition for, and we don't do that. That's why they created now a Crown Corp, so that I can say it's public, in which they're going to look at that problem you just discussed. What is it? And in fact, we invested in the super clusters across the country, and that's been 3, 4, 5 years now. I mean, I think it's create a lot of jobs. If you look at Montreal area, like there's a lot of jobs there. I don't know if it's create a long-term like corporate tax revenue because the corporation is there and the strategy and the vision and this CEOs are there. I don't know the answer to that, but the CIC is hopefully going to address that. So pay attention to what CIC is doing. They're going to be looking at and solving that problem. Last question.
I think I'm changing the topic a bit because so my name is Heidi. I'm at SPC leading the data literacy program as part of our data strategy. So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is bridging that gap between the business people and the IT people, and we're in the middle of doing like qualitative research, trying to see what's the gap and where it's happening. So I'm curious in terms of that trust build, because I guess where my question is coming from is sometimes I talk to IT folks and they're like, the program folks don't know anything about data. We shouldn't trust them with the tools, and they just want more tools and it doesn't solve their problem. And then the program people say, we never get the tools. We know the business. We know what to do with it. So I'm wondering, like, as you're seeing some of the success, what like, do you have any insights into how that, like, to bridge that gap? And then also,
Sure. I
the second part, so.
So I'm gonna say two parts. So at the NRC, there is a dedicated data analytics and sort of research analytics intelligence team embedded within the researcher community. And they're the ones who are to support the researchers. So the researchers, like, that's been around forever. I didn't have to add that. That's been around forever. So the tools, the modeling, like the insights into ensuring that your hypotheses can be tested appropriately. So within the research area, and generally speaking, for the researchers, if you had to do a PhD, you need to know statistics, like people in the research area know what to do with data, or else they wouldn't have gotten their PhD. That's my answer to that. But on the more general sort of, if you're working at ESDC, or if you're working somewhere else where a lot of people are policy, program, those types of skill sets, I have an answer for you, and you should go see Transport Canada. Because when I was there, we had developed how we were going to embed data scientists within all parts of the business. We're going to create a new classification, and we're going to train people. We're going to give them the tools and access to their data, that whole piece. That's the data. Like, again, going back to who said about a data strategy, that's so there. Like what I just said, 4 or 5 things that's what, if you want to really do something about data, those are the things that are tangible that you can do about data. So we had hired about 25 data scientists. 8 or 9 were experts, and the rest were all students at Transport Canada. And we embedded them around the business. We said, hey, you've got data. You want to determine if we should wear masks on airplanes during COVID. Here's a data scientist who can go through the analysis and figure out if we should wear masks on airplanes because of COVID. Like, that's an example, right? And everybody here at ESDC, the policy, should we increase payments for X reason Y? Well, data scientists need to look at that, the impacts of those things. So those are 3 or 4 things, if I were you, that are tangible. If you don't have, where are you at? Do you have a data governance committee at PSPC? Okay, if you don't, talk to your DG. I have a data governance, even though the researchers are part of that, but we also have our corporate side. But you should, whoever your CIO is or CDO is, your chief data officer, you should start thinking about that. And then even the classification of transport, we're starting to embed data skills in the posters, even for a policy person or a program person. And even the digital skills, say, have you ever worked on implementing a digital project? So that's how you start to bring in the people that have the skills. And then, of course, we set up some training programs and some courses, and we had a community of data scientists. So it wasn't at the DG level, we brought it down to the working level. That was really helpful. So we got people excited about that. And we showcased some cool projects. So for example, the data scientists looked at airport inspections in the BC area. And we had 5 full-time inspectors. And there's tons of airports in BC. I don't know. It's not just Vancouver and Victoria. Apparently, like, there's lots of water airports. There's more than what you would think. And those 5 inspectors could not keep up with the number of inspections they had to do. So data scientists looked at the data, whatever, and we found a way to do all the inspections with 4 people instead of 5 people. And so now the 5th person was now becoming more strategic about what should we be inspecting in BC based on that location. So that's the power. We showed an example like that, the data, and then they hired a data scientist within their team, to support all of aviation. But hopefully that helps.
That's a digital culture, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you ever so much, Philip. That was a fantastic presentation. Be able to listen to it. You'll be able to listen to it very much. I'm a firm believer in R&D. I was a business guy. Plans and operations. In 1985, all of a sudden I ended up at a sister agency, Defense R&D Canada, Research and Development Canada, and they do defense and mainly in the justice, public safety field. Anyways, regardless, they set up a world-class test bed. And we had people from all over the world come and take a look And you could not only talk about it, you could show people what the impact was. And it was incredible. And there were little things like the database management systems didn't exist, so they built one. But to go to your word, it was innovative, it wasn't commercialized. Okay, so there were all these spin-offs and geographic information. I mean, you take it for granted now. That was all spun off and fed off between 1985 and 1990. Okay, well, when that testbed was going, that's when the money went into the commercialization aspect, and all of that ended up going elsewhere. All the word, there was no intent to commercialize. Well, anyway, whatever. I just wanted to elaborate. R&D is used right now. It's available. Make use of NRC in your departments and in your areas, or if you're working for. I know many people are basically talking about are coming into this presentation from different areas of the world. Take advantage of your national research councils and your establishments if you're doing digital transformation in government. They can be incredibly good partners. Okay? Leverage it. Don't be technology. Be ready for it. Okay, without further ado, I will basically close the session. Thank you very much. And right now, have a cup of coffee, relax, and I'll get the next speaker set up, and we'll be starting off at 10:10.
No. Oui, ok. Avec engineering. Building, direct sur King Edward.
We got some interesting.
Well, I'm gonna say that. Permission. In specific. Article. It's very hard to.
Sorry.
Because
No, you gotta bring.